yes, it's still good to have a contract and it's still good to have the legal rights. But when we turn toward workers supporting each other, we still have every bit of our effectiveness as a fighting union.
Colin Smalley, president of IFPTE Local 777 at the Corps of Engineers in Chicago, and steering committee member of the Federal Unionist Network, if I'm recalling correctly, is on the line. He's here to talk to us about some trainings that the Federal Unionists Network is putting on. Been on the show multiple times before. Colin, welcome back to the program.
It's good to be here.
It's great to have you. You're following your international president. He was on to talk about NASA earlier in the program. You're here to talk about some of the stuff that the fund is doing. Really excited to be talking to you about that. And, you know, it's timely because obviously the Trump administration is ripping up contracts at the VA, the EPA, FEMA. And, you know, I heard concerning conversation at my last local union meeting about what happens if or when they do this at the DoD, where most of my, where most of my fellow union members are at. My union local is a DoD local primarily, and so and I heard some talk among the people who were at the meeting, which the people who were at the union meeting is a very select group of folks. There's not very many people come to the union meeting, and there were people at the union meeting who were like, if this happens to us, I mean, are we packing up and going home? And it was really, really concerning stuff for me to hear. And, I chimed in a little bit. I took the floor for a moment and just kind of reminded people about what a union is. Because a union is not a contract. A union is not your employer recognizing you. A union is something different. And these trainings that the Federal Unionists Network are putting together are based on that on a more fundamental understanding of what a union is than about contract enforcement or winning an election or things like that. So before we talk about what the training is, what people are going to be learning in these trainings, can you remind people about fundamentally what is a union?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with everything you just said. And I work in a DoD agency as well. And so my members and I are worried about the same thing. When are they coming for our contract? We've already been targeted by this executive order. And what I keep telling people, and in my opinion, what is important to keep in mind is that at its root, a union is an association of workers. It's workers who have come together to protect each other, to be stronger together, and to bring their needs and their perspectives to the forefront. Because the boss is always going to have their own things that they're trying to accomplish. There are things that, they're trying to make money in the private sector, in the government, they're trying to execute some particular mission. And oftentimes that can be done. Those needs can be met while still meeting the needs of the workers. Right. Mm-hmm. But that's never going to happen if you don't have the workers coming together and working together. And so that's at its heart what a union is. And in the federal sector, it sounds kind of like that's the theme of this show and or this episode at least. In the federal sector for a very long time, for longer than we've had collective bargaining rights and sort of this bureaucratic structure, we had unions. And the workers, there's some really inspiring tales from, maybe the 1800s even, of the railway mail service was a part of the post office. This is before airplanes and even before semi-trucks. They were moving the mail around the country by rail, in a car that was attached onto a freight train or a passenger train. And you'd have postal workers inside these cars sorting mail as they go from one town to the next. And they were the first whistleblowers. They won the first legal protections for federal employees in the Theodore Roosevelt administration. He had put out a real, severe executive order that punished workers for talking to the press, for talking to Congress, for talking just publicly at all about their working conditions. There were people dying of tuberculosis in Chicago, and it was postal workers, federal workers, who raised the alarm about it and how it was spreading and what was going on, and the fact that the city wasn't doing anything to protect its people, and much less the workers, at Chicago Union Station and the Chicago Post Office there. And that case is what won the very first whistleblower protections, which actually survive to this day. 100 years later, federal workers are still protected by the ability to talk to Congress and have that be a legally protected activity, right? So federal workers were unions. They were taking care of each other. They were speaking out for each other. They were doing the things that they needed to do. And I'm not necessarily saying, striking, withholding labor, obviously that kind of thing is not the same equation as it would be in the private sector, but there are things that workers can do collectively in the federal workplace without harming our mission, without harming the taxpayer, without harming our communities, because we are members of our own communities. We are taxpayers. We are, many of us doing public service because we believe in serving our communities. And so at the same time, we can act collectively to meet our needs. And, so to me, that's the role that our unions have, whether the government recognizes us and whether we have a contract with them that, makes it easier to understand what everybody's roles are and how we're going to solve problems together. The contracts make it easier. The system was set up because they got tired of dealing with the unions fighting in every separate way. We're going to fight wages by appealing it to this board. We're going to fight about, discrimination by taking it to this board. We're going to fight about discipline by taking it to this board. And sometimes if we're not happy with that, we're going to take it to court. Well, they didn't want all that. So they came up with this system that we could all work within. Now they want to take that away. We've got the blueprint already.
Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate.
Yeah, I mean, and just with my union, AFGE, AFGE was founded in 1932. My local of AFGE in Huntsville, Alabama was founded in the 50s. Like every time I walk into my union hall, I see the charter and I see the 12 charter members who created the union in I think it was 1953. The National Federation of Federal Employees was founded in 1917. The National Association of Letter Carriers was founded in 1889. And here in Huntsville, Alabama, the NALC Local was founded in the early 1900s. And the first time that federal unions got even a semblance of collective bargaining rights was President Kennedy's executive order in 1962. And then we got a law standardizing collective bargaining rights in the 70s. I think it was 1978. And so, literally for the majority of the existence of so many federal employee unions, we have not had the legal right to a union. We have not had our boss recognizing us as a union. We have not had contracts with our boss, and yet we have still been there. And so, I took up a pretty, I went on a little bit of a rant in my last union meeting, telling people all of this. Because it's so important. Because the union is not a contract. The union is not our, the boss recognizing us. The union is us. The union is workers coming together to make our workplaces better. And so that is And you know, in many cases, to fight for the mission of the agency. You know, I mean, if you wanted to make a lot of money, you're not going to work for the federal government. You're going to go and do something else. And so a lot of times people are attached to the mission of the agency that they work for. And so they want to fight for the mission of the agency, too. And so that is what the Federal Unionists Network's trainings that are coming up, that's what they are based on. And they call this, you know, the unionism that kind of doesn't have an emphasis on the contract or recognition. There's a lot of different names for it: solidarity unionism, pre-majority unionism, things like that. Can you explain a little bit about kind of, you know, we just went over, you know, what a union is, but what does it mean to act like a union in a situation where you don't have recognition and you don't have a contract?
So to me, I like to go back to the toolbox analogy, right? Where you've got a toolbox, it's got a bunch of different things in it. Some of those may be old rusty tools that your grandpa handed down to you. And some of them may be, you know, the shiny new thing that you caught your eye last time you were at the hardware store. But they've all got a different job to do. And sometimes you can do things with more than one tool. And so, you know, if I've got a contract and I can file a grievance through that negotiated grievance procedure, that can really make it to where one steward, let's say, has the force of the Federal Labor Relations Authority behind them. So if management just blows off the grievance process, we can go to arbitration. And if management blows off arbitration, we can go to the FLRA. And we can, you know, if the FLRA blows us off, we can go to court, right? So we've got this system, and one or two people can shepherd a case through that process. You know, a union negotiating team of a few people can go negotiate, you know, demand a bargain over a change in working conditions, and then sit down at the negotiating table and fight for what the members want. When you have that system, you can get by with a few people making a big difference, you know, maybe punching above their weight a little, right? But there are still tools in our toolbox to achieve those same outcomes, even if we don't have the tool of the contract and sitting down at the bargaining table. We have the ability to act collectively. And that right, you know, that ability, that's way deeper than the federal labor statute, the law that Congress passed in the 70s. This is going back to the Bill of Rights, right? These are some of our natural rights to act collectively. And so what we can do is, let's say the boss has wronged somebody and we don't have a grievance process by which we can go, you know, make management make it right by holding them accountable with an arbitrator, for instance. Instead, what happens if we act collectively and we draw attention to this injustice, and we draw attention? I remember a story in Labor Notes about a federal union in New York, one of my, you know, sister locals in IFPTE, who's had a member who was being, you know, denied parental leave. She was expecting a kid pretty soon and was trying to get everything in order, and the boss was being a real jerk. And frankly, everybody got together, they met about and talked about what to do, and they decided they needed to go approach the boss together and have this group of people saying, using their voice, their collective voice, to say, this is wrong, you need to treat her with respect. And that's what happened. They approved the leave, and things were set back the way they ought to be. And it didn't use that union's contract. It didn't use their grievance procedure. It didn't use the FLRA or courts or anything else. It was just people working collectively to do what's right. And so this is really what we're getting at, is this idea that, yes, it's still good to have a contract, and it's still good to have the legal rights and, you know, help enforcing them and things like that. But when we turn toward organizing together, and when we turn toward workers supporting each other, we still have every bit of our effectiveness as a fighting union.
Right. Right, exactly, and those are going to be some of the lessons that y'all are going to be talking about with participants of this training. Are there any other lessons that you can give us in just a couple of minutes? I know that thinking about how to act collectively and protect yourselves and all of this. It's there's a lot that's going to be going into it. But is there any other lessons that you think that you could preview for us before we let you plug everything?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually have a blog post on the Emergency Workplace Organizing Committee's website. It's been reprinted at Labor Notes, and I outline a number of things that workers can do, even still using some of their legal rights, the things that are in regulations, and even a lot of times still on the clock. One of the big downsides to losing a CBA in the federal sector is going to be that all the union reps are no longer, they're either going to have to take leave or do work off the clock and volunteer and that kind of thing. And that has the potential to have a lot of people walk away from it. But you can still do safety inspections on the clock as a union rep or as a representative of employees. You can still represent employees who have been discriminated against or who are asking for reasonable accommodations to do their job. Even though they have a disability, that can all be done on the clock as a representative, and the employees have a right to representatives of their choice, which can be their union. And so those are a couple of examples. There's a bunch more. If you're shorted on your overtime pay, or you have an injury at work and you're trying to go through the workers' compensation system. You have rights outside of your union contract to have a representative by your side and help you navigate those systems at the times that you need help the most. Same with discipline. And so in many of these things that we think as bread and butter roles for a union, your union will still be there for you, and you can still be there for other people through your union. And in many cases, do it on the clock with legal support behind you. But then there's also, what I was just talking about with collective action that goes even beyond that. And I think right now we're looking at a time where what we need, in my opinion, more than almost anything is creativity and an open mind to think about, what are the problems that we're encountering at work and what can we do together to solve them?
Right. No, that's great. The title of the article in Labor Notes is How Federal Workers Without a Union Can Still Act Like a Union. You can Google that. It'll come up. We have also got a link to it in the YouTube chat. And the training is by the Federal Unionists Network. The title of the training is How to Be a Union No Matter What the Boss Says. And it's going to start on Monday at 7 p.m. Central Time. We've also got a link to that in the chat as well. We'll put a link to that in the podcast notes and everything. So check that out. Make sure you attend. Is there anything else about this training that you want to make sure you leave people with before we let you go?
Mostly just that, we are going to have a few folks from some of the most acutely affected unions who just lost their contracts, at least for now, the Veterans Administration, the EPA. So, if you're a worker at one of those agencies, we really want to have you on. We want to have you getting an idea of some of the things that you could be thinking about together with your colleagues. And then take that back to your union. But I also want to call anybody else who, whether they're a federal worker, whether they already have a union and a contract and they're worried about losing it, or maybe they're trying to form a union in their workplace and they don't know what the path ahead is when it comes to whether they're going to get a vote or things like that. With all this uncertainty, I think there's going to be a little something in this webinar for everybody. And so we'd really love to see everybody come out and bring some of these ideas back and start talking with each other to figure out how you're going to put it into action.
All right, great. Colin Smalley, steering committee member for the Federal Unionists Network and president of IFPTE Local 777 in Chicago. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, there you go. Folks, if you're a federal employee, you definitely want to check that training out. And you want to, get involved with the Federal Unionists Network. They're doing lots of good stuff.
And let me add also, if you are a local or state government employee in the South, for example, this would be very relevant to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've had United Campus Workers on the show a few times. They are using a similar pre-majority solidarity unionism kind of model because higher education employees in the state of Alabama are not given collective bargaining rights or union recognition. And even at the K-12 level in education here in Alabama, they have meet and confer with what they call the majority employee organization, but that's it. So these lessons are very relevant, and even in those conditions, you can organize and you can win for working people.
Absolutely. You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.
Which side are you on?